Hi everyone, I am so happy to have you here at the Needs More Jazzhands viewing party or watch and review, whatever name I eventually come up for it. So what we do on this channel is we watch musical episodes and you'll be able to see my commentary as we go. So sometimes that's commentary on the musical episode as a musical episode. Sometimes it's just commentary on the show as it is. And sometimes it's just me nitpicking about all sorts of things. But if you're looking for something a little bit more free-flowing than what you're finding on my podcast, this is the place to be. So I'm much more my fun, let me just talk about every single detail side on this channel. And then if you have somehow found this channel first, I want you to jump over to the podcast in the description below, Needs More Jazzhands, and there I walk through kind of all of the details about what makes something a good or bad musical episode. Here I more just talk about it in the moment. All that said, today we're going to be watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer once more with feeling, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so before we can get into actually watching the episode, I want to talk a little bit about where this episode is in the show. So, the episode Once More with Feeling is episode 7 of season 6 of the show, so it's very late in the show. It's in what, in my opinion, is one of the best seasons. I mean, obviously, awful things happen in it, but I think it has some of the most interesting plot lines and definitely some of the most interesting episodes. So there's some fun episodes like Tabula Rasa. I'm always a fan of episodes of a TV show, especially a supernatural one, where they try to convince the main character that what they're seeing isn't real or something like that. So Normal Again is a huge hit for me. But I also think that this season just really deals with a lot of the elements of depression really well. So in the first couple of seasons of the show, we see, I'm the chosen one, I'm gonna kill things, woo! And in season 5, we see, I don't really know what I'm doing with my life, and grief, and that episode is fantastic. The Body is one of the best episodes of anything I've ever seen. But season 6, I think, really gets into the nitty-gritty of what happens when you don't want to be the one who the whole world is resting on anymore. When you've lived a life of fighting and struggle, what happens when you find peace and have it taken away from you? And I think that's just such an important thing to know about where we are in the show. We are at a period where Buffy does not want to be here. Buffy was killed, sacrificed herself, however you want to put it, at the end of season 5. She comes back in season 6, and the audience and Spike are aware of the fact that she thinks she was in heaven and was pulled back when Willow brought her back. Now, from the point of view of the Scoobies, of course, they brought her back from a hell dimension and they're trying to save her life. But that's not really what it is, and so she's gradually regressing further and further into herself. I think this episode is the best musical episode of all time. I think it's one of the best episodes in all of Buffy. So, without further ado, I'm going to start watching it.
Previously, I love you.
Oh, super important thing that I completely forgot. So Buffy has a sister. She was introduced late in the show. Most people hate her. I don't hate her. I just, whatever. She is not handling well the fact that her mom is dead and her sister died and her sister's the Slayer and now her sister's depressed and not paying any attention to her, so she's a kleptomaniac, which is really important to this episode, but overall not super important to the show, except for the fact that it's showing that Buffy is not taking care of something early enough, so it's become a problem. So I guess it does set up that the premise of this episode only happened because Buffy wasn't paying close enough attention, kind of, except that's not really what ends up happening. Anyway, thought that was important to mention. There is so much that's need to know here. Willow and Tara, who I love, are fighting because of completely justified things. Anya and Xander are getting married for no apparent good reason, but I kind of love them anyway. But they're insecure, so that's happening. Essentially, there are relationships, and none of them are quite as happy as they seem. Cool?
I'm multitasking.
Okay, well, while it's on an ad, I hate the intro to this musical. I mean, it fits. It's what it needs to be, but, I mean, it's not the best. Let's be honest. I mean, the first song is great, but the, like, oh, everybody's face is in the moon, it's just, that goes a little too far for my personal tastes. Oh my god, there is so much exposition in this little opening bit. I mean, we see Buffy in bed while everybody else is bustling about with energy, and we see Tara thinking that Willow did something sweet when actually she put a spell on her, and that's really awful. We see everybody clicking, and Xander and Anya talking about the wedding, and Buffy just kind of staring into space and doodling darkness. There's so much good exposition. If you're watching this as a standalone, it really does set up so many points of it. I feel like somebody who's never seen this could watch the previously on Buffy and this intro and could totally get it. And that's such an upside to this episode because it is so important as being episode 7 of season 6, but also it works as a standalone. So, like, awesome on that. I shouldn't do that. So awesome on that. I love this first song. I love it so much. It's so much of the depression experience. But if you're looking at it like within the story, I really want to know the story of like how we got these multiple demons that just all happen to be in the cemetery. They don't seem to be doing anything. They're just there for her to stab. Like, was it just when the spell was cast, they were just like, I guess we're gonna die now. And what about this random handsome guy tied to a tree? Like, what were they gonna do with him? I get that the whole point is he's like, I will do anything for you, my love. And she's, whatever. I get that that's like the important thing, the thing we're supposed to get out of it. But what I want to know is what was actually happening there, because that sounds really interesting. Sarah Michelle Gellar is not the best singer in the world. I'm never going to claim she is. I know she didn't really necessarily want to do this. She was worried she wasn't good enough for it. They talked about dubbing somebody in, but it's so important that they didn't do that, and I'm so glad they didn't. And that first song is just so many things. The literally going through the motions, I want to feel alive, so much. This episode is a masterpiece, and I'm just going to talk about it a lot, okay? I love the conversation of Buffy being like, hey, is everything cool? Oh yeah, nothing going on. So nobody was like randomly singing, and they're like, oh my god, we all had this experience. Because you gotta figure, everybody just thinks they're going crazy. And I really want to see this conversation with people that aren't in the know about things like demons and witches and stuff. Like, what are they doing? They're just like, honey, you burst into song again. Well, you did it last night, so it's not just me. It just, I love that they address how insane all of it sounds. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so I think I'm just going to pause it after every song and just tell you what I love about it, because I love all of them. So I've got a theory. There's so much here. It tells us about dynamics between characters. It's fun. But I think one of the big things, especially with Buffy here, is that we're seeing her saying things that are really awful, and everyone being like, oh, haha, it's fun because we live in a world without consequences. but she has the consequences, and that's really what we're getting in this episode. You know? Hey, I've died twice. Giles laughs. This is horrifying. I mean, it's genuinely horrifying. Even if it wasn't, she went to heaven and was pulled back. I mean, just dying multiple times. There's some trauma in that. There's trauma in the fact that her mom died. They're talking about, well, we've done this a million times, so it'll all be fine. You know, it's do or die. We'll pay the price. But most of them don't really know what that price is at this point in the show. I mean, Miss Calendar being killed was awful. Absolutely awful. But most of them, for the most part, haven't seen consequences that were personal to anything. You know, going through this fight has been Buffy gets hurt, Buffy gets killed, random people get killed. It's really not personal to them, and even though they are, you know, we've done this before, we know what we're doing, they don't really know what it's like to actually have to deal with that and deal with the weight of the world being on them. Because none of them are the Slayer, and none of them have died and come back. And I think this season is so much about, you know, we've looked at this and there's not really stakes because people can come back and most people live through it. But let's talk about the psychological stakes there. Even if they come back, what happens when that goes wrong? If, you know, everybody survives, there's still a psychological drain on having to save the day over and over. Apocalypse, we've all been there. It's a big joke. I think there's, I think season 5, we have a joke from Riley saying, you know, I never thought I'd need to know the plural for apocalypse. It's all fun and games because this is just a joke about the show. It's humor, haha. Except it's not. And for Buffy, this episode and this season, we really see why it's not and what it does to her. To have apocalypse after apocalypse, to die, to see death every day, to kill every day. And I think that's a really critical thing in this song that frankly just doesn't get brought up enough. There's so many layers to it. It's not just a fun song. So anyway, that's me rambling. Okay, so another thing. Most shows that want to do a musical episode don't make a full set of musical numbers. They do at least a couple of already created songs, make it at least a half jukebox musical, if not a full one. Not only does this one actually write whole new songs and rehearse and perform and all of that, but I love the little bit numbers. I mean, you have no idea. But we see, you know, okay, well, we've got, 5 actors that we need to really train. That's one thing. No, we just have a whole musical number. They got the mustard out. We see the woman trying to sing to the cop to get away a speeding ticket. We see later on in this the guy tap dancing to death. We see people doing random dance and singing numbers behind our characters as we walk through town. There was so much put into this in the background. It's not just these 5 characters that we know and care about and their problems that we know and care about. The world is really impacted, and I really appreciate that. I also would kind of like to have seen at least one person talking in the background after it's over saying, I just had the weirdest dream yesterday. I was singing for some reason about somebody else getting mustard out of their dry cleaning. Just to keep that up, but not necessary. It doesn't add to the story. There's not a good point for it. But it just, in a later episode, it would have been kind of funny to see.
Oh my god. I'm cured. I want the boys.
I know that this is awful. And I know that Willow has cast a spell on Tara to make her think that they're okay. And that's awful, and I will address that more later. But they're so happy together, and it's so cute, and it's honestly pretty well written. I love the, oh, I'm cured, I want the boys. It's such a cute line. I love it. I love them. So many people love them. They were so important for what they represented in representation for queer couples. And you not only had to take it away with the bury the gays that happens at the end of this season, but we also have to take it away with their entire time is tainted by the fact that Willow cast a spell on Tara. And we get this beautiful time together, and their outfits are amazing. I just wanted to wear Tara's outfit from this episode like my entire life. That was my goal. I wanted to look like that. And it's all undermined, and it's just that gnawing feeling in your gut that this is awful, and I hate it. It's a good song. They do some great wordplay. It's fun. They're cute together. But Willow she doesn't have a single trace of guilt about this, about the fact that they're happy together because she cast a spell on her. And I know that that feeds into the magic addiction thing, and there's a really interesting plot that has to do with, but it just... I don't know, that's nothing against the musical episode, it's just a plot that I really wish they didn't do. At least not at this moment in the show, because there's so many good things that could happen here, and I hate that it didn't. But that's just me. Okay, so, again, I hate that with how important Willow and Tara were to the LGBT community and to representation, that they chose to do this really exploitative plot with them. I love that this whole musical, we have these cheery, upbeat songs about very serious topics. I think that the magic addiction is an interesting plot. I think that showing this arc is really fascinating. But it hurts that one of the first lesbian couples we see on TV in any serious capacity, not only one of them ends up dead in a really horrifying way, and the other one ends up evil because the other one is dead in a really horrifying way, but it's also really exploitative, it's abusive. I mean, the whole song is Tara saying, "I've never felt wanted, my entire family hated me, they treated me like garbage, and you taught me that I could be my own person, that I could grow, that I could shine in my own light." And all the while, she's under a spell because she did something Willow didn't like, and so Willow controlled her. It's just really awful. I don't know. I'm not going to say it's wrong, it's awful to see, and it's not an enjoyable kind of awful. I don't feel like, this song connects with me, like, on a deep level, like the Depression songs do. I just, like, want to protect Tara and, like, get her out of that situation and give her love. That's what I want.
That's entertainment.
What a villain introduction. Can I just say, I love the ability in film and television to have a character ask a question and then the next frame answers the question. It's just a really great device to be able to do. But having, oh, it's romantic, it's singing and dancing, what could go wrong? And the tap dance of death is just a perfect answer to that, and then in walks the villain, and it's just... It is beautiful. It is such an amazing way to do it. There's so many elements. I feel like just a million people put so much work into making this the perfect episode. And as we're going to see as we go forward, there's a lot of really not perfect episodes of TV shows that decide that musicals will make them better. So I really appreciate how much energy went into this, into the choreography, into the lyrics, into getting them to sing at least, not terribly, into the editing and the writing, and It delivers on all fronts, and I have no idea how they did it. But I love it. Okay. So I'll Never Tell is such an interesting song because it is so much setting up what comes after this. So we don't see terribly much happening because of this song in this episode. So as a standalone, like if you were just watching this episode for this episode, all you really get is they're a weird couple and they bicker. And that's kind of all you get out of this song. But it so sets up him leaving her at the wedding, which I hate. I actually really, really dislike that episode. I don't feel like it makes sense for him. I really liked them together. I think it set off a lot of not necessary plot lines. But for that being the direction that we're going in, I feel like it really does set that up. It's a very fun song. It's the one that gets stuck in my head all the time. It's a much more happy song, you know. It's just, oh, we're a good couple, but we have some insecurities, and those are going to get in our way. Whereas everything else is like, haha, I'm abusing you. Haha, horrible depression, you know. So I like that it's very lighthearted. I like that they can play a little bit more. I mean, they end it laughing, and how many times do we really get that in this episode? So I love all of that. I'm just not sure that it is the most important one for this episode. But, you know. Additional editing beat for later. So, I'm conflicted about the song I'm Under Your Spell. 'Cause, like, it's a fun song. When you're watching it without too much context, it's cute. They're happy together. But if you know the context, not great. Okay, so going back to my earlier point about seeing all of the other people in the world being affected by this spell, I love that they used it as a way that we don't need to exposition dump. So I said earlier, I love the villain entry. I love seeing what could go wrong. Tap dance to death. Now the audience knows what can go wrong. Obviously, our characters need to then hear what can go wrong. So I love that they used this opportunity to show us, here's another fun musical number about a woman with a parking ticket, and it shows us how widespread this is in the world. So it has a purpose, but it's also, it allows us to transition from Giles and Xander and Anya talking about, here's our number, da-da-da, to, oh my god, somebody burned to death? And that gives us that transition. It makes sense, but it also means that we don't have to hear Giles tell everybody the thing that we already know. So it's a really good way of avoiding that kind of exposition dump. I love it. And I mean, who doesn't love that song? I love, love, love the background music numbers in this, and so many people do. Okay, I know that I normally wait until afterwards to comment on the songs, but I love seeing on Let Me Rest in Peace, Spike starts singing and you can just see in his face like, I don't want to sing, this is stupid, I hate this, but I guess we're doing it anyway, so here goes nothing.
You're not staying then?
Okay. So again, I'm conflicted on Rest in Peace, because I love that Spike calls out what Buffy's doing to him. She's depressed, that's something that's worked through in this episode and in this season, and I appreciate that, but I'm very much a believer in just because you have a mental health problem does not mean that you are excused of all responsibility for the things you're doing. And Buffy is absolutely taking advantage of Spike. So I'm all for him calling her out. I think this is a good song. I just feel like the showrunners kind of forgot about this. You know, it's a very important number where he's saying, stop taking advantage of me, stop using me and thinking you're better than me, just so you can play with me when you want me and throw me away afterwards. That's a really important song and a really important message. But then, if you go on with the show, they end up getting together in what nobody could call a healthy relationship. And then he attempts to rape her when she calls it off. And so many fans love this relationship, and I do think that there's some good things in it. I do think he sees things about her and in her that nobody else does. But so much of this song is about saying just because Buffy's the hero and Spike is the vampire, it doesn't mean that she's not the bad guy in this situation. She is taking care of... So much of this song is saying that just because Buffy is the hero and Spike is a vampire, that doesn't mean that she isn't taking advantage of him. She is using him. She is the bad guy in this situation. And I love that message. It's so important. And again, if we're viewing this as a standalone movie, that goes through pretty well. Except, I mean, they kiss at the end of it, so clearly that relationship still merges. But if you were just watching this, maybe you could imagine after this they begin to have a healthy relationship, but that's just not what happens. So again, out of context, great song. In the context of the full season, it marks a really big change. It's a really important moment because it sets up the Spuffy relationship. It's really important. I don't like that they take away from the message of this song with the things they do later on. But maybe that's just me wanting too much. Seeing Tara realize what's happening with the flower and with the memory spell is just heartbreaking. And it moves the plot forward. I mean, this is... Okay, so here's my thing. Every single song in this musical is necessary. I mean, the added bit songs are mostly just to tell you more about the flavor and very good narrative vehicles, and that's great. But when we look at the purpose of the entire B-plot with Willow and Tara, we see that it's setting up for Tara to find out, for Tara to leave Dawn alone, for Dawn to get kidnapped, for that to prompt the end of the climax of the story. So the setup is just so well. Every single beat is really needed. I know I kind of said that wasn't true with I'll Never Tell. It comes back. It's important. It's not as important. It's definitely the C story of this episode. But it's still, I really like how well laid out everything is. And I really want Tara to be happy. That's all I want. I know a lot of people hate Dawn. And a lot of people have reasons for hating Dawn. And a lot of people have kids aren't fun on shows that aren't well suited to having kids. And that's, not a great argument for hating a character, but it is whatever. But I do really hate that she's clearly going through a lot. She clearly needs help. And instead of allowing her a song that really breaks that down, they get 2 lines out of, does anybody even notice? Does anybody even care? To then show, oh, you got kidnapped because nobody was around, because you're everybody's lowest priority. Great. And then Buffy goes on to blame it on her. Oh, Dawn's kidnapped again? Must be Tuesday. Like that's Dawn's fault, and not the fault of the multiple people who have weapons, who have magical training and mystical heritages, leaving her alone while there's a crisis and a demon that's incinerating people from the inside. Like, I feel like there's some responsibility on not Dawn here, everyone that's not Dawn, for leaving her alone right now in order for her to get kidnapped. But again, nobody even noticed. Nobody even cared. And that just rubs me the wrong way. So I regret to say I don't actually know what the song is called when the dancing demon is singing with So I hate to say, I don't actually know what the song is called when the dancing demon is singing with Dawn. But it's sad, because he's such a good singer, he's such a good character. But I think that's probably my least favorite song. There's really absolutely no point in that song. I mean, it gets us to Dawn is kidnapped. Now the demon is looking for Buffy. Da-da-da. But the monster of the week is actually the least entertaining part of this episode. So it's a little boring to watch, actually. He's great. I love him. It just, he's a demon, doing demon-y things. It's nothing we haven't seen in every other episode. It's just now set to music. So. Standing in the Way is such a heartbreaking song. There's so many great elements here. I'm just gonna babble on forever. I love that we see Buffy is so strong. We see her agility, we see her strength, we see all of that intercut with she may be strong physically, but mentally and emotionally she's just not there. I do kind of dislike, he says the cries around you, you don't hear it all, and we cut to Tara and Willow, because it's not really Buffy's responsibility to see that Willow is going off the rails, but at least that connects our A and B plot lines. I feel like it's a great song. It's him finally seeing, it's not just that she's not okay, it's that she's really not okay. She's not bouncing back from this. She's not going to come back from it unless something really changes. And I do really appreciate that song. One thing is, this song, Standing in Your Way, and then the next song, Standing in Your Way / Under Your Spell reprise, are the only ones that are shown where it seems to be in their head. Like, if we're talking the mechanics of it, every other song that we've seen, anybody who's there can hear and see what's going on. But in this, for some reason, Buffy and then Willow in the next scene, they don't hear it. And I guess part of that could, if you really want to get into, like, giving Joss Whedon credit for things that he may not deserve, it could be to do with the fact that Buffy and Willow are completely ignorant. They are ignoring, they are not hearing what the other people are saying. So maybe it was intentional. But otherwise, it's just a little weird for the mechanics of this spell to suddenly not work. Because with Xander and Anya, it's a really big deal that they won't tell each other their insecurities and their fears and their annoyances with each other, but it's revealed through song. So it's a little bit weird that this isn't revealed in song to the other person. So I'm not sure mechanically what's going on there, other than Buffy and Willow are so in their own worlds that they're not even hearing what other people are saying. So I guess that could be it. So, on the point of the reprises, one thing I will say is I really do love that this show is showing both sides of things. It's about Buffy having depression. It's about Willow being addicted and being an addict. but it's also about the impact that that's having on the people around them. And I do love that this episode really does show, you know, we can feel bad for Buffy, we can struggle with what she's struggling through, but we also need to acknowledge that she's not blameless, she's not perfect, and other people are hurt by her actions, and seeing that, I think, is really, really important. At this point in the show, I think a lot of people are going, oh my god, let's protect Tara, Willow's evil, but also going, why is Giles being a jerk? Buffy didn't do anything wrong, she's depressed. So I like that we do see these put together, that it is just as valid for each of them to be upset and to realize they need to step away for their own sake and for the other person's sake. And I really do appreciate that they played with that element there. It's just, there's so many dark elements in this musical put to such heartbreaking and upbeat and fun music that gets stuck in your head. It's got everything. But there's always a limit to how perfectly something can be done, you know? Okay, well, at least at the point that Buffy is saying, you know, Dawn's in trouble, must be Tuesday, she has been told that Dawn summoned the demon, so at least she has a reason to believe that Dawn is responsible. I still don't like all the hate on Dawn for no apparent reason, but whatever.
Plan schman.
Okay, walk through the fire. It's our showstopper, it's our big ensemble right before the climax. Super important number, shows so many different layers of things. I'm not entirely sure what its message is supposed to be about depression, you know. You need to walk away and let the person, you know, fall or rise on their own, except you also need to be there to back them up and to help them. I guess a lot of it comes down to Buffy not telling them what's going on, made it so they were unable to help her the way that they needed to. But I'm not really sure what you do at that point. I love the song, I love, you know, the putting your hand to a flame and not even feeling it and wanting to feel it so badly and missing who you used to be and your passion. I mean, there's so many layers there. I don't know. I love this musical. I feel like I'm being super critical of it right now, but I love this musical. But I guess when there's so much you love about it, when everything is on par, it's what can I nitpick? And I guess that's what I'm doing here. Okay, give me something to sing about. When you're looking at everybody else's lives and you're not seeing their problems and you're so caught up in your own that everybody else is in a Disney movie and you're living in, at best, a horror movie, at worst, a blank screen. It's such a beautiful metaphor, there's so much of it. Having Spike breakdown, it's not a song, it's not a script, it's not a movie, it's just existing. And the only way to get through anything is to just keep going. It's so good. And then Dawn has to go and ruin it. And I know, I've been championing Dawn this whole episode. But we have this great song, we have this soul-bearing, we have this really connected moment between Spike and Buffy. And then Dawn stands up, like she's relevant. The most difficult thing about this life is to live in it. It's so unnecessary, it's not needed. Cut that, and everything's so much better. I'm not opposed to Dawn as a character, but who thought that was an important line to have? And then the editor kept it in there, and it didn't need to be, and I just... That's the one flaw of this episode. Dawn going, the hardest thing in this world is to live in it. Oh. Like, yeah, cool. We've got this great metaphorical work. We've got stuff coming out in songs. We can see it on their faces. We can feel it in our guts. And then Dawn's like, just in case you didn't get the moral of the story, here it is. It's just... don't do that. Okay, so we finally get to why the C plot matters. Why does Zanya... Zanya. Is that their ship name? I never bothered looking it up. We finally figure out why Xander and Anya matter at all in this episode, other than just they are characters that exist, and it's because Xander summoned the demon because he was a little worried that they wouldn't work out. Which I guess works, and it fits their song, and it ties into the future episode where he, leaves her at their wedding. So it works, it just... I don't know, I feel like what they wanted here was to work through Buffy and her depression and her irresponsibility with Dawn and her relationship with Spike and her situation with Giles, and they kind of wanted to work through Tara and Willow and them figuring out what they needed to work out. And they were like, how can we get that there? Well, clearly a music demon. That works. That's easy. How do we get him here? And that's the entire reason for the C plot, just to bring in the demon so that it can explain why everyone's singing and dancing. But demons, generally speaking, maybe demons have. Monsters, at least, in this show, don't always need to be summoned. They can just appear. So I feel like the whole necessity of Xander summoned the demon, and that's why his plot matters this episode, it just didn't really need to happen. It's probably the weakest area of the story, which, C plots will be the weaker points. But if we're looking at it, our A plot is Buffy and her depression. And she's really struggling with herself, and other people are struggling with their relationship to her and her depression. That's our main conflict. Our secondary conflict is Willow and Tara, and them working out their stuff. So when our villain, who's theoretically kind of important here, is relegated to an accessory of the C plot, it's not great. That being said, I think that the strength of the A plot and the B plot, and the strength of how much it tears us apart, and how so many people with depression, or who have been around people with depression, or who have been around addicts, can really feel connected to these songs. It does so much for us to see that and have it put into words. I rewatch this every couple of years. It really connected with me, and its success attests to the fact that it really connected with so many other people. So because that's so meaningful, and it connects with so many people, and it resonates, I guess the mechanics of the villain of the week weren't super important. I don't think it takes that much away from it that the villain of the week kind of just is there to be there. But it's definitely kind of a weak point of the story. Basically all of the Xander, Anya, demon stuff is just relegated to, we need this to explain why everyone's singing. Other than that, there's really not much point in it. So that's my thoughts on that. Okay. Show's over. So, where do we go from here? Is an song, but even the show drifts away from it, so it's a song that exists to exist. But its premise, where do we go from here? When we won, when we all feel worse than we started. It wasn't even a non-victory, it was a Pyrrhic victory. We won, but everything's worse now. Everybody hates each other. Buffy and Spike have their kiss, and in a normal musical, this would be the moment where they realized they were right for each other and they just wanted to love each other, but that's not what this is. And it says that very clearly. This isn't real, but I just want to feel. Running away from your grief and your depression and your emptiness to a relationship, to what will be very abusive. That's realistic. I really appreciate that they play with these really deep, dark concepts. It deals with everything's awful. There's not a good outlet for this. And the fact that the episode following this is, hey, so that was awful, let's just forget any of this ever happened. That's Willow's immediate reaction. I can make more memory erasing stuff, and we're not going to deal with any of this because we can't deal with this. Is really great. I love that it doesn't resolve things. It closes with a kiss, it fits the convention of the musical, it plays with these conventions in some very self-aware ways, but it also doesn't give you a happy ending, even though it looks like a conventional happy ending. There's so many great things here. I absolutely love the music. I love how it plays with these themes, how realistic it gets on several of them, frankly, how much it makes me feel like I'm not alone. I've been watching this since I was in high school, if not earlier, and it helped me get through depressions, to feel the same things, to know that a hero can survive these kinds of things and they can get through it, and that, things have consequences, and when you get knocked down by getting repeatedly hit, it's okay to go down, that you can get back out of it, that living through it is the way to keep going. There's so many amazing things here. I cannot say enough. I love that the music really expresses the deep inner tensions. It moves the plot forward. Frankly, the least impressive thing about it is why it's a musical, but the musical itself is amazing. It's really great on its own. It's really great in sequence as part of season 6. I can't say enough good things about it. I know I said a lot of bad things, but anyway. So, thank you guys for coming to my channel, for checking this out. I will be posting the podcast version of Needs More Jazzhands, Music Made Me Do It. So you can check out some more, how shall I put it? Some more organized thoughts on what I thought about this musical episode, reasons why I think it's so effective, and my scaling system for musical episodes. So we're starting with this one because it is well recognized as one of the best, if not the best, musical episodes to ever be done. They're usually really cheesy, they don't really work. And yet this one, despite the fact that the singing isn't always the best, despite the fact that we have lines literally, this line's mostly filler, it does such a good job on so many levels. And so we're going to start great, and we're going to go probably down considerably from there as we go through various TV show musical episodes. Anyway, thank you for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe to check out the next video of me watching musical episodes, and go over to my podcast. It's linked in the description below. And make sure you check out the more organized version of my commentary on this musical episode. Thanks again for watching. Bye!